Welcome to Coach Bennett's podcast, where every run has a purpose, where kindness is hardcore, where this is about running, and this is not about running, where every starting line is a finish line in disguise, where rambling still gets you where you need to be, where pineapple will never ruin your pizza, and the sodas, adult and not adult kind, are always cold, and where there is room on the starting line for everybody. I'm Coach Bennett. Thank you for letting me be a part of your day. Let's get started. Welcome to episode 100. That's right, 100. 1 honey, a century, 2 Franklins. I mean, that's very, I guess, dollar specific. But anyway, the point is, we made it. We made it to 100. Which means I don't have to keep alluding to it at the beginning of every single episode. Like, hey, it's episode 95. We're 5 away. We're 3 away because it's episode 97. It's episode 74. We're almost 3/4 the way to 100. So that's done. Unless I start, doing weird things like, it's 101. There's one more than 100. I don't see myself doing that. I probably see myself doing it next week just because I'll do it just to be annoying. But beyond that, it'll be in the rearview mirror, but will always be something we accomplished together. So thank you to everyone for listening to Coach Bennett's podcast. If you aren't subscribing and following the podcast, if you're not listening to the podcast, if you're not rating and reviewing the podcast, if you're not sharing the podcast and talking about the podcast and sending me mail, then we're not here. We're not at 100. So truly, thank you for being a part of this community that is Coach Bennett's podcast. And I'll tell you what, this episode is really, I think it's a celebration of running more than anything else. It was inspired by a conversation I had with a group of high school athletes in Minnesota last week, where a couple kids came up that had just run a relay. I was visiting Minnesota. I went and spent some time at Mill City Running, right in Minneapolis, a great specialty running store. I was there for their Flapjack Friday morning run, and then went to the Hamlin Elite Meet, which is a really great high school meet in Minneapolis. And then the next day, I jumped in a 10K after getting to hang out with the Mill City running community before, well, it was actually a couple races. It was a 5K, a 10K, and a half marathon there in Minneapolis. Great weather, by the way. Which I lucked out because April, hit or miss in Minnesota, but this was a hit. So anyway, back to the inspiration for this episode. I had a group of kids come up and they said, hey, we like your videos that you have up on YouTube, which is hilarious to me because I made them so long ago. And to be honest, the quality is, it's what you would expect if they're 15 years old on YouTube. But anyway, they specifically mentioned they liked Why Do You Run, which I made like 15, 16 years ago. And after we spoke about it, and I told them a little bit about why I chose some of the athletes that are in the video, and I'll put a link to it in the show notes. I asked, I said, so why do you all run? Thinking, they were going to say, we want to set certain personal bests and we want to win states or qualify for states, all performance-based. And honestly, we talked for maybe close to 10 minutes, and it wasn't until the very end that one of them brought up they think they can do well at states next year in cross-country. Everything else was about the time they get to spend with each other, how they feel when they're running well, and they like the challenge of it and how hard it is. And I just thought, this is awesome. This is really awesome. And I told them, I said, one of the reasons why you're probably going to experience a lot of success in terms of, if we're measuring success by how fast or how far you go, it's going to be because of these things you brought up that don't have anything to do with how fast or how far you go. So what I wanted to do was kind of celebrate running by asking that question, why do you run? And going over some of the reasons why I run. And when I talk to people about why they run, I bring up a lot of these things because sometimes we don't realize why we're really running, why we keep coming back to starting lines. And some of that is because of, how we're introduced to the sport. It could be very performance driven. So we have kind of tunnel vision on what we can get out of this sport because it's introduced to us as what you're getting out of this sport is a faster 5K or a faster 1500 time or a faster half marathon or the ability to cover 42.2K. And what we're robbing ourselves of are all of these benefits that we're getting that maybe we don't realize. And if we're not realizing the benefits, we're not taking full advantage of those benefits. So I just thought this would be a cool discussion because I do want you to be answering the questions I'm asking. I want you to be thinking about some of the points that I'm bringing up. And by the end of it, I want you to have a whole host of reasons for why you run. So I think I'll start with that. You should have a whole host of reasons for why you run. It doesn't need to be one reason. And what happens is if you engage with someone, you say, why do you run? They'll usually come up with a first answer. And I think it's really good if you're a coach or if you're a teammate to someone or if you're just having this discussion with yourself, it's great to have that first answer. Just to make sure it's not the only answer. You should have multiple reasons. You should have multiple purposes to go for a run. And those reasons, those purposes, they can change. That's the cool thing. They can change. When I first started running, it was for very different reasons than I run now. Some of the reasons I originally ran with and for, I've maintained, I've held on to, or I've let go of, and then I've gone back and grabbed them again, and suddenly they became my reasons all over again. So what I want you to do is just take a moment here and think about, what are some of the reasons why you run? Going back to when I started to run consistently and really started to think of myself as a runner, I can tell you straight up, I was running to qualify for certain races. I was trying to run certain times. I was trying to win certain events. And that's a great answer. And when I, thought about this, I dug a little bit deeper and I thought, well, why did you want to run those times? Why did you want to qualify for those events? Why did you want to win those races? Because it goes deeper than just running a certain time at a certain place. So I thought about it and I thought, well, you know what? I really actually loved the process. Like if I'm looking back on it, even then, whether I was mature enough or maybe aware enough to understand why I was coming back to these starting lines over and over again, because running can be difficult. And sometimes running's supposed to be difficult. So what's bringing me back? And part of it was I loved the process. I loved that the template could be changed, that, we're supposed to do this today, but we're going to have to adjust it because of the weather, or maybe we had some breakthroughs that we weren't expecting, or there were setbacks that we hadn't planned for, obviously, and we're going to have to make some adjustments, and, things aren't cooperating, or other things are cooperating, or we have to rely on other people who are going to take advantage of maybe the situation as opposed to being disadvantaged by a situation. So I loved the fact that there was so much flexibility, or really there had to be flexibility if you were going to progress, if you were going to improve. There was something dynamic about it because it was dynamic, and I enjoyed that. And I guess I was introduced to running in a very good way where it wasn't constantly the same thing over and over and over again. There wasn't a redundancy beyond certain redundancies that occur in running. Yes, it's a sport that is going to say you got to run and you have to run consistently. And most of those runs are going to be recovery runs. But you can mix it up on where you're running, and you can mix it up on speed run days because there's a whole host of ways of doing that. You can mix it up on, the quality of the terrain, the time of day that you're running. And when I was in high school and when I was in college, because I ran indoor track and outdoor track and cross country, there were a lot of different types of training that I was introduced to. And with those teams and with your training partners, you have to personalize the training for everyone, but ideally you're training together. So there are certain adjustments you need to make. So you may be on a team that is kind of speed oriented, and so you're going to shift a little bit towards some faster stuff, maybe lower volume stuff. And then, a year or two goes by and some people graduate. Next thing you know, you're more of a strength oriented team. And suddenly you're doing higher volume. You're doing longer intervals. Maybe you're doing more tempo runs. And to me, I just thought that was fascinating. Not to mention the fact that you change as an athlete. You develop new strengths. You sometimes develop new weaknesses. So all of these things, to me, made it fascinating. That it wasn't show up, run 50 minutes, go home, and guess what? Tomorrow, we're going to show up, run 50 minutes, and go home. It wasn't an assembly line. To me, the training was always a very creative type of atmosphere. So that was one of the things that I loved. I loved the process, and I loved the competition. I did. Some people run and they're not into the competition aspect. That's totally fine. That's fine. It's about what you love and what inspires you, what gets you passionate. To me, I loved the competition. It doesn't mean that I didn't get nervous on the starting line. It didn't mean I didn't get anxious and nervous leading up to race day. I did, but I loved that. It made me feel alive. There was an electricity to it. And to be honest, I don't race much at all anymore. And it's probably the thing I miss the most is the racing. And I think in many ways, the racing is what brought me back to the starting line on all those practice days, because it took me a really long time to not be very, very lazy. So what often happens to athletes, because running is not very kind to laziness, kind of punishes laziness. Now, on the flip side, it celebrates consistency. And once I became consistent, my improvement was marked. I progressed pretty quickly. But prior to that, I had a lot of ups and a lot of downs. What brought me back was the fun of competing. It was the most playful aspect of running for me. And eventually, I tried to incorporate play into all of the running, especially the harder training. But early on, the thing that I think encapsulated play the most in the sport of running was the racing. And I was lucky to get to experience it in a lot of different ways, whether it was cross country, which brought in all sorts of things like mud and snow and sleet and rain and slipping and falling. And it was just wild and crazy, and hills and downhills and just cool stuff. Or track, indoor track, which is like punk rock track and field. Loud, fast, aggressive. Outdoor track, which a lot of different events, a lot of different relays, a lot of different cool places to do it against a lot of different cool teams. So it was a very exciting thing to me, that competitive side to it. And so far, I've just been talking about all these cool things I got to do while I was competing with other people. But you're also competing with yourself, which is really fun and exciting and challenging. So that was it. The excitement and the nerves that came along with it, the need to focus during training, during races, during certain parts of the year. I loved that aspect as well for a couple of reasons. One, I mentioned I was very lazy. So running helped me become less lazy, and then not very lazy at all, which was pretty great. So thank you, running, for that. But running also kept me away from certain things that I'm not sure I would have stayed away from had I not had running as a motivation and sometimes as an excuse. I mean, I enjoyed high school and I enjoyed college and I enjoyed post-collegiate running, and I probably went out too much. I definitely went out too much, and I would have gone out even more if I didn't have running there, if I didn't have a responsibility to my own running and to my team and to the goals and the commitments that I had set. So there was a lot that running kept me away from. It kept me involved in so many good things and around so many good people, good situations, good experiences. But it also kept me away from not so good experiences, not so good situations, not so good decisions, and not so good people. And I'm really thankful for the sport doing that for me, especially at a younger age, but even now, which I think is interesting because a lot of times I think people don't think of that. They don't think of the situations running puts you in and the situations running keeps you out of. You know, I mean, just an example is you got a long run on Saturday that you can complain about because maybe you can't go out on a Friday, but, you know, sometimes, you're going to be missing great things that happen on Friday. My hope is the sacrifice, you know, what you're giving up on that Friday night, you're getting back way, way more because of Saturday morning. The experience, the joy, the community, all of those things that you're getting from that early morning long run on Saturday, I would hope is better than what you would have had if you had not gone on Saturday morning and you had decided to go out on Friday. It's a tough sell. At least for me it was a very tough sell in high school and college to convince myself that I was getting back way more from the running than from going out and partying. But deep down, I think I realized it. And I don't know if I ever really resented running for keeping me away from certain things. I think, you know, I would sometimes say things like, oh, you know, this sucks. I don't get to go out. But I don't think I ever truly believed I was giving up more than I was getting from running. And I usually tell athletes, like, if you feel like you're getting less out of this than what you're giving up to do this, then maybe the sport isn't right for you. Because again, I've brought this up in past podcasts that I believe the sacrifices you make for the things you care about should lead to you getting back more than you gave up. And I know that's a weird way of looking at it because usually it's sacrifices are associated with you're giving up something you care about for something you care about, without a doubt. But I think if we really, really dig in on this, you should be getting back more than you're giving up. I think if there's a hard part to this sacrifice, it's you have to believe without maybe knowing you're going to be getting back something better, because you got to give something up first, and then you have to have the faith that you're going to get something back better. So you got to give up Friday night before you get your Saturday morning. You know what I mean? I think that's where, it can get a little bit tense because you're like, oh, I'm not going out on Friday night. Oh, this is terrible, because you don't know what's going to happen Saturday morning. You haven't gotten there yet. So anyway, all right, I'm rambling a little bit on that one, but, you know, whatever. I also love the challenge of running. I mean, that's another reason why I run, the challenge of it. And what comes along with great challenges, same thing with great goals, big commitments, is there's a struggle aspect to it. And I'm not saying I'm always, you know, the biggest champion of like, yes, let's struggle, but I know that it's a part of running. I'm not looking to struggle more than I need to, but I know that if I'm going to run and run consistently, and if I'm going to challenge myself, I'm going to struggle. And I am aware of that. I know it, and I embrace it when it comes as best as I possibly can. And I think that was something that always brought me back to running. And I'll tell you just flat out why. I'm very proud of that. I'm proud of how hard running could be and how hard running was on me at certain times, how tough running was at times, how much I struggled with running at times. I'm very proud that I kept going. I kept showing up, that I made it through those times. And it's something that, because I've acknowledged it and I'm proud of it, I can then incorporate it into the rest of my life. When other parts of my life are hard, I can say, yeah, you know what though? You've done hard things. And I think sometimes we rob ourselves of an awful lot of confidence and satisfaction and celebration and pride in ourselves when we don't acknowledge and appreciate what we've done. I mean, I was speaking to someone also in Minnesota, and she had, told me, that she doesn't run, and within a minute had let slip out that she'd already run a marathon. I was like, are you kidding? You just told me that. And we have conditioned ourselves to diminish ourselves. And a lot of the times, we won't even celebrate our best stuff, much less when we struggle. And you should celebrate both. Remember, struggling is not proof of failure. It's proof of successfully not giving up. You should celebrate that. Next time you're out there struggling on a run, remember, it is not proof of failure. It's proof of successfully not giving up. And if you run consistently, and if you have great goals, I'll tell you what, struggling does not mean that you've gone off course. It means you are on course. Because you will struggle. You will have tough times if you are setting great goals for yourself, if you are committed to progressing and getting better. There will always be a struggling aspect to it. That is not a sign that you're doing something wrong, okay? Because it's a part of the gig. Now, on the flip side of that, since I'm, just spent a minute talking about struggling and tough runs and maybe things not going right and setbacks and all that stuff, which is a part of the journey, running also just makes me happier. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I'm still running. That's one of the reasons why I would like to run for the rest of my life. It makes me happier. Now, here's the thing. You have to just pause for a second and listen to what I'm saying. I'm not saying running makes me happy all the time, because I'm not happy all the time. What I'm saying is that running makes me happier. So if I'm sad, because I get sad, and I go for a run, there's a little bit of joy in my life. You can have multiple feelings, people. I've brought this up before, but I think it's something I should bring up probably even more than I do, which is you can have different feelings at the same time. You can be sad about something and you can be laughing. You can be frustrated by something and you can be confident about something else. You could be angry about one thing and you could be rejoicing about something else. You can have all of these feelings. You've got enough room inside to handle them. And I know that running makes me happier. And if I'm happy already, I'm happier. And if I'm sad and I go for a run, I'm happier. It may not mean I'm bubbly, super cowboy, puppy dogs, ice cream, unicorns farting rainbows, happy, which is super happy, right? What I'm saying is I'm just maybe less sad. Or maybe I'm not less sad. I'm just also a little happier. And that is something that I love about this sport, that it can do that for me. Now, part of it is on me, because if I'm running for the wrong reasons, for the wrong purposes, then running won't make me happier. In fact, running can do the opposite. So you got to be careful. It comes from you. I guess I should say that. It's not running that's making you frustrated. It's what you're trying to get out of running at this time that may be making you frustrated. Like sometimes if we don't progress in a certain way, we get frustrated and we start to get very angry at running. It's not the running. It's not the running. It could be the fact that your body's fatigued and it needs a break. It could be that the progression that you're looking for is going to take a little bit more time. It could be that you're looking for benefits from running that maybe running can't give you at this time. I'll give you an example for me. I'm never, ever, ever going to run a faster mile than I've already run. So if I'm constantly trying to run a faster mile, I'm eventually going to get frustrated, and I may grow to resent running. Because I'm like, why? I'm doing everything I'm supposed to be doing. I'm doing the strength training. I'm doing the endurance work. I'm running consistently. There's diversity in my training. Why am I not getting faster in the mile? Well, because I can't. I can't get any faster in the mile. That happened. It's in my past. Some of us can progress in certain events over certain periods of time, and then you can't in certain events. Maybe you switch to a different event and you can progress and you can get faster in that event, or maybe you're measuring your progression by distance or volume and you can go further and it's not about faster, or maybe you're measuring it in experiences and what you can accomplish in that ways. That's great. But there are certain things that, maybe you're asking the wrong things from running, or maybe running is incapable of giving it to you. So you need to adjust your relationship with running. Running will give you everything it can give you. But if you start asking running for more than it can give you, it's not fair to blame running. And I think that's one of the reasons why running has continued to make me happier, is because I'm not asking running to do things it can't do. And that then stops me from trying to do things that, I can't do. Now, that doesn't mean I can't set goals. It doesn't mean I can't try new things. It doesn't mean I can't push myself to be my best. Because remember, when I'm saying I'm never going to run a faster mile, I didn't say I'm not going to run a better mile. Because if I'm going to narrowly define a better mile by just faster mile, then I'm robbing myself of so many different ways I could run a better mile. I still think I have in me a better mile. That could mean a mile that I ran and got the most I could get out of me, comparatively speaking. Today, maybe I could go for a mile and finish it and say, wow, that was about as close to 100% of my potential as I've ever gotten. And maybe my personal best from many, many years ago wasn't as close to my potential at the time. Maybe it's a tactics or strategy. Maybe it's a mile with my most joy. Maybe it's the most beautiful mile I've ever run, and that was the best mile for that reason, because I'd never been on a mile run that was that beautiful. So if somebody said, what's the best mile you've ever run? Well, I'm going to have a lot of different bests, is what I'm trying to tell you. And that's why running continually makes me happier, because it can make me better in so many different ways, which is why, like I said, that's why I keep running. And I think when you look at running that way, where you look at running as it's going to give you everything it can give you, and running wants this relationship to work. And by the way, it is a relationship, okay? And since I feel, a very healthy relationship with running, that's why I keep running. That's why I have the ability to run more if I wanted to run more. That's why I run consistently, because I enjoy it consistently. I know that it can do so many things for me. And when I have all of these different reasons why I run, there are really different excuses to run. If we go back to the running my fastest mile, which was one of my primary motivations for many years, if that was my primary motivation to go run, well, that excuse is out the window, because I'm not going to run a faster mile. So why go for a run? If that's the entire motivation and inspiration to run, which is run a fastest mile ever, well, I'm not doing that anymore. So that's out. So why go for a run? And I'll tell you what, I struggled with that when I stopped competing at an elite level. And I didn't know why I should be going for runs, because I'd been training with such tunnel vision for so long that I didn't realize that outside of the tunnel there was this whole other world. And once I got out of the tunnel and saw that, I had a lot more reasons to run. And I'm still running. You know what I mean? You know what I mean. It also means that you should have lots of goals. I know I'm kind of using the words interchangeably with purposes and reasons, but you should have lots of goals. A lot of times we associate goals with times, distances, races, and I think that's fantastic. But make sure you're having goals with maybe lots of different times, lots of different distances, lots of different experiences or races, but also have goals that have nothing to do with numbers. I think if you allow yourself to have lots of big goals and little goals that have nothing to do with numbers, if you have lots of big goals and little goals that are short in duration, long in duration, goals that you can hold on to for a long time, and goals that you can let go and have a brand new goal, or a goal that you can drop and, if you want, come back to later on. Maybe the situation wasn't right. I think you have to be flexible with your goals, and I think you should have fun with your goals. If you do that, it's going to be one of the reasons why you run, as opposed to one of the reasons why you stopped running, because the goals just became too heavy. Your goals should be light. They should never weigh you down. It should be the opposite. A great goal, no matter how challenging it is, should open up the world of running to you. And in opening up the world of running to you, you should feel like you have more space to breathe. You feel like you have more places to explore, and you should feel lighter. You shouldn't be weighed down by goals. You should be set free by goals. And I think when you do that, you're letting your running be about more than just running, right? When you start doing these things, when you have this conversation about why do you run, what you find is there's so many reasons why you run that have to do with running, and yet there are so many reasons, probably more reasons, for why you run that really don't have anything to do with your running. I mean, listen, one of the reasons why I was trying to run such a fast mile was because of the confidence it gave me. I knew that this was a great goal. I knew this was going to be an epic challenge. And I knew that if I did the work needed to be in a position to potentially reach this goal, I was going to be a very confident person because of what I needed to accomplish just to get to a place to potentially accomplish that goal. I knew this journey was going to be full of highs and lows and time in the desert and struggles and breakthroughs and barriers broken down and barriers that don't break down and adjustments. And I knew it was going to be this entire epic journey, and I wanted to have a wild experience. I knew that if I went through all of this, I was probably going to be meeting lots of different people, learning lots of new things. I was going to have a more fully lived life by going through this. Now, what does this have to do with 400s and 800s and tempo runs and fartleks? I mean, it has something to do with it. But I knew that going through this journey was going to have me be just a better person for having gone through it. And when I say a better person, I'm not saying a better person on the starting line. I'm not saying a better person crossing the finish line. I'm talking about being a better person before the starting line and after the finish line. Beyond the running is where I was going to see the majority of the benefits from having run. And that's where the most of your benefits should show up, because that's where most of your life is lived, not running. That's where you spend the most amount of time, not running. So hopefully the running you are doing, the reason why you run is to make all of that time you're not running better. Why do I run? So the life I live when I'm not running is a better life. That should be kind of like the all-encompassing, encapsulating reason, right? And if that's the case, if your life is better when you're not running because of your running, then guess what? Your running is going to be better. Because if your life is better when you're not running, that also plays a part in your running. How cool is that? The answer, my friends, is very, very cool. And when you put it all together, you see like your running should inspire and inform and be an investment in your life and how you live your life. That's and how you run your life. I was like, do I say that? And I'm like, oh, what a cheesy pun, but I'm a cheesy guy. So yeah, I mean, that's what it should be about. All right. It should be about everything, right? That's what your running should be about, because this is about running and this is not about running, which means this is about everything. So I hope the episode, this episode 100, was a conversation that you had with yourself while I was having a conversation with you. Because I think if you have this conversation a couple times a year, honestly, could be out on a run, could be sitting in traffic, could be on a hike, whatever, it's only going to make your running richer, because the conversation is going to unearth different answers every single time you have it, because your reasons and your purposes, your motivation, your inspiration for running is going to change. Some things may be a constant throughout your entire running journey. Some things may go by the wayside. It doesn't diminish how important they were, because those motivations, inspirations for why you run, those reasons and purposes that maybe you had 10 years ago that you don't have now, they helped get you to here. They are a part of you. Every stride you're about to take is a result of the strides you have taken. So the adjustments, the changes, the different iterations you've had over the course of your running journey, they've all played a part in your progress, that progression to here. And that's why you should be welcoming new reasons and purposes and motivations and inspirations for why you run. So be open to it. Be open to it. And that's the episode. That's episode 1, honey. So if you could, so we can do this again on episode maybe 200, please share the episode with people that you think would benefit from having this conversation. Share it with teammates, share it with family, share it with friends, and thank you for listening. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for following. If you haven't done those things, please do it. It'll take you 2 seconds before this ends. You can just literally go over and hit follow or subscribe on whatever platform that you listen. Leave a rating, leave a review, even leave a mention for why you run. Why do you run? And you can put that up on Instagram or Threads or Blue Sky, wherever you want to do it, and I'll give you a fist pump and repost it, and we can celebrate all the reasons why we run. Or you can drop a little note and send it to the mailbag, which is in the show notes. And by the way, I'll put up that video that the kids were talking about, why do you run, in the show notes as well. So as always, thank you so much for listening. Take care of yourself, take care of each other, and I'll meet you on the next starting line. Thank you so much for listening to Coach Bennett's podcast today. And if you haven't already subscribed or set yourself as a follower to the podcast, I really hope you would. And make sure you check out the show notes, because in those show notes, you're going to find a link to Coach Bennett's newsletter and all the social media sites I'm on, like Instagram and Threads and Cameo and Blue Sky and nope, not on that one anymore. So all the ones I am on, you're going to find it in the show notes, so check that out as well. And as always, thank you again for listening to Coach Bennett's podcast. Until next time, you keep taking care of yourself and each other.